Jaden, this is the podcast I've been waiting to do my whole life. We have very special guests on the show. Of course, we have Alex Singla, who's a senior partner at McKinsey and leads or co-leads really Quantum Black, which is the AI consulting arm of McKinsey. And that, takes all this AI and cutting edge solutions and combines it with what McKinsey does really well in terms of domain expertise and deep strategic thinking. And I'm excited to have Alex on the phone, but I'm really thrilled to have his colleague, Liz Grennan. Note the last name similarities. This is my wife, Liz, and Liz is also a partner at McKinsey. Alex, I should say, is a senior partner. Liz is a partner, and Liz co-leads the global digital trust service line, as well as the data ethics and privacy efforts, and she's really a leader in responsible AI. Let me first just say welcome to both of you.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Grennan.
Let me actually just ask before, I'm not even going to let Jaden speak for 1 second. I want to hear first from both of you real quick. How did you get here? Because you're both in pretty senior positions doing pretty cool things. Alex, do you want to go first? Just how did you sort of end up in this amazing position helping to lead Quantum Black?
Honestly, some level of dumb luck. But the reality is I've been at McKinsey for 24 years. And so for the first, I'd say 17, 18 years, I was not like this big techie doing a bunch of AI and data work. What ended up happening, I was actually a pretty hardcore operations person serving clients doing operations work. I brought in Quantum Black, or AI arm of the firm, to basically look at why big engines were failing. And historically, you would just do that operationally, look at the engineers would go out and look at claims and understand what happened. Well, here, these Quantum Black folks took all the data, dumped it into this huge, machine learning element, and cranked out some analyses and insights that was groundbreaking, done in a fifth of the time, and was more insightful than anything any human could ever figure out. And I quickly said to myself, I'm not old enough to retire before this thing eats what I do every day for lunch. And so I'm quickly this analytics thing's not going to go anywhere. And so I jumped all in on that topic. And so the combination of learning about a bunch of technology, but then also particularly understanding what's it take to implement it, which is a lot of what I was doing in the operations world, which is how do you get the front line to change its behavior and do something different? And so as I was really bringing these things together, the now global managing partner of our firm, Bob Sternfels, at the time said, Alex, why don't you help us lead this effort? And so I literally fell into the role given that, and it's played itself out the last 5 years, which has been an absolute blast and just a great learning.
That's so cool. Liz, over to you.
Well, I have been at McKinsey 7.5 years, and I had previously, I've been a lawyer my whole career, but I had previously been the general counsel of 2 different AI startups and joined McKinsey right when they bought Quantum Black. So I had that same feeling of maybe it wasn't the first thing I would have thought to join, except for that they had gone so deep in AI and analytics, and I jumped on it opportunistically to think this is a great place to be an entrepreneur. And I joined as its first analytics lawyer and ultimately became Quantum Black's lawyer, and then led McKinsey Digital Legal and Risk and got to serve Alex as his lawyer. And then a few years back, I shifted over to consulting because I think there's so many exciting things to do operationally, grounded in legal and regulatory knowledge, but it was so much fun to see there were things actually happen within organizations and make that happen. So, and Alex has been a great mentor and sponsor.
Amazing. Okay, this is so fascinating. You guys obviously haven't just started. This is something you've been doing for a while. So I gotta ask Alex, how has your, given your background and you've been focusing on this for a while, how has your last year been?
I think Liz can my family can testament to this as well. I don't think I've ever traveled or worked more in any given year than last year. It was unbelievable, but I got to just say, it's a super privilege to be in the role I had, because there's value in going across nearly 200 organizations, CEOs and boards having very similar conversations. So at some level, once you have the conversation 5, 10, 20, 50, 100 times, you kind of really understand what everyone's where they see the opportunity, where they see the challenges, where they see the risks, back to kind of Liz's point around risks and how you think about it. And so it's a super, I'm humbled to be in this position to have the opportunity to do that on behalf of McKinsey, and just learn from all these amazing other institutions, which then, of course, we can codify and have our own strong perspectives on how things can go forward. So it's been the most I've ever worked, but I got to tell you, probably the greatest learning and one of the funnest years I've ever had in my professional career.
That's amazing. I think a lot of us in tech and in business right now, we're feeling this like acceleration, right? And I think, there's going to be that same sentiment with a ton of people. And I guess to that, I would just be curious to hear Liz's perspective too. And I know Connor's got a lot of exciting questions, but I would be curious to hear from you, Liz. Give us one of your highlights of the last year, like in working in this AI, this crazy environment. What's one of your highlights from it?
Thanks, Jaden. I think, Alex mentioned an inflection point of seeing when the Quantum Black folks could turn around results that were just sort of groundbreaking. I think folks said, okay, I'm doubling down on analytics. I'm going all in on this. Here we are now. And I think with Gen AI, it is another inflection point, and maybe more poignant, where it's so transformational. It's so exciting. And it's so clearly the beginning of a long arc that for me, realizing that I had been focused on, data and AI risk for a while, but knowing how desperately the clients were really going to need to get after this to enable acceleration in this space. And the acceleration's too compelling to ignore. So it feels to me like I started to see one of those times where everyone's going to have to do this. And so that's one of the fun things about being at McKinsey is you do see so much. You see such a 360 view across clients, jurisdictions, sectors, size of industry, size of company, different leadership styles. But themes start to emerge, and it's really great to be able to bring insights that you start to see patterns emerge, and you bring them to bear to say, here's how you might fix this, or here's how you might pursue that, and here's some results you can get, and then just test them in the real life labs that are these organizations, which I think is really rewarding.
That's so cool. It's funny. So just in terms of the speed, Jaden and I were just talking just before we came online with you guys, just even this last couple of days have been just insane. It's very, very hard to track with one giant behemoth coming out with something, and then literally hours later, something else coming out with something. And, in various sort of different spaces. And I mean, we're talking about kind of LLMs a little bit and generative AI, but really in different spaces. And I was just, this is a question for both of you guys. Like, McKinsey is known for going, extremely broad and extremely deep. That's I guess the power of being McKinsey, right? I don't think we're sort of, introducing McKinsey to the world here. But in terms of this generative AI, it's seemed to, and Jaden and I have talked about this a ton, it really seems to just hit every single industry. And I don't know if it's hitting every industry in the same way, but just wondering how you guys have sort of seen it from, you don't have to track the whole year, but from like kind of the evolution of the year, what's it been like trying to start to kind of, grab onto common themes around when organizations are doing this well or when they're not, or with the questions that they have? I know risk comes up a lot, and obviously like, what are we supposed to do comes up a lot, but I know it's a really broad question, but how have you guys sort of, what are like the common threads you all are bringing together when you're tracking across different organizations?
Liz, you want me to start and you can chime on in?
That sounds great.
Yeah. So Connor, I think it's a great question. I synthesize it down to basically 6 questions. I'm purposely oversimplifying. There's hundreds of questions, but I bucket them basically into like 6 big categories. At the early part of 2023, like the first half of the year, the question was basically like, what is generative AI? How is it different than machine learning, traditional AI? Is it hype? Is it reality? So quickly, the conversation changed to these 6 questions. It went from like a super high level to like, what are the specific opportunities within my business? I don't want to hear about writing a poem for my son's birthday party. How do I go improve efficiency, effectiveness, customer experience, employee engagement in my organization? Like specific, question 1. Question 2 then came down to like, how do I govern this thing? How do I govern all the data, all the models, and all this tech I'm going to be building? How do I govern it? Should I be decentralized, centralized? How do I think about this? Because most organizations have struggled with data for years. Forget about Gen AI. Just in traditional AI, they've struggled with data. The third question is around the ecosystem of players. If you start to think of Gen AI, it's tremendously complicated ecosystem. You have all the hyperscalers with, AWS and Azure and GCP. You have all the LLM providers, whether it be OpenAI, Cohere, Anthropic, Hugging Face, and the list goes on. And you need all those parties to come together to actually deliver a business solution at scale. And so, how do I manage this network of this ecosystem of players who's, by the way, every 3 months, somebody else is in the lead on a different topic. It's not like it's static, right? It's evolving, and there's a new billion-dollar unicorn popping up tomorrow. So how do I think about this? The fourth question is around what is the implications this has on risk versus value creation, which Liz can talk, all day long on. But risk is a critical topic. It's not like we weren't talking about risk in traditional AI, but with generative AI, it's kind of like you're talking about risk on steroids, right? Like every board, every CEO wants it to understand the risk implications of this, but yet with the balance with value creation. Mm-hmm. The fifth question is around talent and people. What implications does this have for my existing people, future talent I'm going to hire, and how about for my technology stack? What is the implications on the tech stack? How do I have to think about that? And then the last question is always around how do I get going? How do I learn? And how do I capture value? Because we will continuously say this is absolutely a learning journey. And so you need to start. Speed is the strategy. Learn your way through this. Balance risk along the way. But it's a really important that it's a learning journey. You got to start to learn.
Yeah, I would say the same. I think some of the markers, you asked Conrad about patterns, some of the markers of organizations that are really leaning into this with strength, there's a readiness aspect to it. And so typically, I think last year we had a lot of conversations around the risks. Which is Alex's original point, what is generative AI? Is it a hype? Is it distinct? What is it? Give me context and scope. And then it was, well, wait, what about all these risks? And, the parade of horribles, if you will. And just trying to get heads around the risks. And do we even want to pursue it? And then I think as the year went on, it became clear that they were going to pursue it. I think there was sort of an initial sort of reaction of shut down. Nope, our organization is not going to use it. But then you ask, if you poll the employees of an organization, they're all using it on their phone. Like there is no way that people are not using this. So the horse has left the barn. And also it's incredibly, the value is there. So it's too hard to ignore. So then given the folks are pursuing it and we are all living in an environment, even if you don't pursue Gen AI, your vendors all do. So there's no way around the readiness piece here. This is the world that we live in now. This is the new normal. And so I think those who lead with strength are those who are pursuing readiness. And what does readiness look like? It's answering those questions that Alex listed. It is, do I have the op model that will support this? Do I have the talent that knows how to do this? Do I have the strategy that overpins this? Do I know what value I'm searching for? Like what are my use cases? What's going to be valuable? What's not going to be valuable? What's a waste of time? What will fatigue people beyond the point of wanting to pursue this? Do I have the right risk management? And how do I get to speed and adoption? How do I make this fly once I, get this all right? So, these are the things I think the leaders are doing early, because you're going to have to do it at some point anyway.
Yeah.
Maybe can I add two other things? I just, as Liz was rattling, that I just want to build off of. I think when we look at those organizations that seem to be really accelerating, in the back half of 2023 and even, in the early part of 2024, is some common themes are they are business-driven problems they're solving.
Yeah.
So they're not building tech for tech's sake. There's a business problem they're trying to solve. And then the conversation becomes, how does Gen AI or AI play a role in helping solve that business problem? And so it's a really important kind of mindset shift of let's create a use case around a specific problem, a tool, to what's the business problem we're trying to solve. Now let's figure out what use cases apply, is kind of one. The second one is, in every instance, the CEO or the top team have to be aligned that this is something they're going to go after. Because it is a learning journey, it's good. You're going to have starts and stops. You're going to have failures and successes, and you're going to have to invest in this ahead of the curve. And so you have to have some through cycle mindset that says we're going to keep working at this because we know it's going to be critical to what we do. And then the third thing, which, I am talking a lot about, is you have to think about value capture on the front end, not the back end. And what I mean by that is at some point, organizations create a bunch of technology, deploy a bunch of solutions, but at some point you have to capture value. And the only way you get P&L value is one of four ways. Either, you reduce headcount, you slow down hiring of headcount relative to what you historically did because you put in some solutions. The third is if it's a growth solution, you're increasing sales targets. Or fourth, if it's a customer experience or employee engagement, you better make sure that, the customer experience is increasing retention or lowering acquisition costs, right? And at some point, the CFO is going to come knock on somebody's door and say, help me justify this continued investment. And so, thinking about value capture on the front end is really, really important. And aligning finance, HR, legal, and risk as one group with technology and the business, we think is critically important, particularly with this world of Gen AI as you move.
Yeah, 100%. Liz, I know you work, specifically with kind of the trust and the safety aspect of a lot of this AI. Something that I think a lot of people would love to get your perspective on is, what is the framework? Yeah, I feel like we kind of had that you kind of use when addressing this, because I feel like maybe we kind of had a test run with ChatGPT. We all had to figure out oh my gosh, huge innovation is coming in. This is changing everything. How do we address it? Maybe we had a mini one with Dolly as it got better, but it was kind of before ChatGPT. So, but we're right on the cusp where obviously yesterday, OpenAI unveils Sora. This is the, AI generated video. Phenomenal. So exciting. A lot of concerns in the trust realm with this, right? This is one thing that happened. I predict there will be hundreds of these over the next 5 to 10 years of, oh my gosh, this is, some incredible, insane technology that's new capability. What is your framework? What does it look like when you see something new like Sora, launch, and all of a sudden everyone's asking you, hey, Liz, you're at McKinsey. What do we do about this? How do you process that? How do you make your framework? What does this process look like for you?
Yeah, I'm so excited for Sora. I'm disappointed in myself, given my role in the hat that I wear, that I did not immediately see, deepfakes and misinformation, because I was thinking, I'm going to make this Lord of the Rings. I'm going to I had this kind of vision of how I would use it. The nerd emerged really quickly, but I want to. Here's the thing. There's stuff out there, and it's very exciting. And I don't play a role in society. I'm not a regulator. I don't play a role in society where I'm trying to manage bad impacts across society. And I think I'm so grateful that people are doing that. And I think there are folks at Stanford's HAI that are calling, for investment in just PhDs joining government to get after this. And there's a big need for it. But when I think about helping clients, I think about things that Alex describes. What are they doing? They are doing specific things, and they're doing them because they are solving things. So I'm answering a question you didn't really ask, which is, organizations won't necessarily take the best and most exciting and most shiny and just put it into production. They largely won't. So it's really about creating something around what they're currently pursuing. Say it's an externally facing, a consumer facing virtual expert. Well, that's its own risk flavor. If you call it its own risk category. What are the guardrails you create for that? And you red team the heck out of it. You bring together a bunch of folks that go through the parade of horribles. How bad could this get? And then you create a set of guardrails that go with that use case. Well, what you're doing when you do that is you're creating your new control functions in a lab that is fit for purpose for these new emerging use cases. And I think there's a layering effect as you find things you want to pursue that the CFO is going to sign off on investing in. It's cabined to these pilots, and then as you scale, you'll categorize the risks into these buckets, and ideally you're creating guardrails and learning as you go. But boy, that learning journey applies here too. No one has answers on the silver bullet for risk management for these new technologies, but you have to get started, and you have to start the learning journey both on the risk side and the solutions side, as you do on the innovation and value capture side. So they need to go hand in hand, and I think it will be great if the market for the market and the innovation for the solution, the risk solution space grows as fulsomely and as quickly as the innovation writ large space in this. So I'm hopeful that that's a solution. And outside red teaming, and maybe the government says something about, they're starting to say things about what red teaming looks like and how, standards might emerge and orient around those. So, but for lack of a perfect solution, you really do have to get started with what you have currently in your shop, what you currently need to risk manage, and getting all those folks together to create something that's fit for purpose for the now, and then you'll grow from there.
Yeah, Alex, anything before I ask a question? Alex, did you want to add anything to that?
I think that this is, Liz said it, this is, no one knows the exact answer to your question, Jaden. Like, I think the frameworks are helpful. Like, don't get me wrong, you should have a framework. But what I always would suggest is it's a little bit why we talk about, like, you just got to get going, because you can't write the framework of, like, what we just described with Sora at a level of specificity in which it can be executed.
Yeah, exactly.
You're only going to really know how you think about risk when you actually start to say, this is how we want to use something. Now let's problem solve all the potential risks around it. And what will we as an organization do about it if A, B, or C does, or how do we mitigate? And so I always talk about this, like, you got to put some water through the pipes. So we take like these high level frameworks and, motherhood and apple pie statements and actually make them real. Like, in a real scenario, here's what our organization is going to do and our risk tolerance. And you kind of, document the why you did it, because I think the why is really important, because, all the organizations you spend with, they all want to do the right thing. They all want to do what's good for humanity, like what's good for society. They have positive intent. And so I think documenting that process is really an important step, but it's hard to do unless you actually have like a real example to talk through with some level of specificity. So I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
How I start to think about it.
Maybe I'll liken it.
Yeah, I love this. And it's please.
No, it's Connor. I was thinking when you
go.
When you took a backpacking trip and you went to you went sailing down the Amazon, and I kept thinking about getting eaten alive by piranha. For some reason, like, that's the risk that I'm like, I don't want to do that because I don't want to get eaten alive by piranha. Well, what would you do? You'd not backpack then? Is that the solution? Like, no, you say, okay, I'm going to go backpacking and I'm going to go on this particular flight to this place and stay at this hostel, which has this, which I want to have this level of protection in that hostel, and on, statistically on this, seagoing voyage, no one's gotten eaten by piranha. And yes, I have to sleep in a hammock, but you can, if you have the actual plan, you can risk manage that actual plan versus sitting in like the existential angst of, I don't want to get eaten, which I don't.
I love that the world is seeing what it's like to, like, inside the marriage of Liz and Connor Grennan. Like, I'm like, we should do this, and Liz is like, wait, totally. Where's the spreadsheet? Let's plan this out. Like, what's the risk factor? Like, this is phenomenal. I wanted to ask you, and maybe I want to hear from both of you on this, and this is probably a little more subjective, but we go back and forth on this all the time, and Jaden and I talk about it, and which is this idea that it's much less about a sort of a typical digital transformation, and there's just so much change management in here because it affects general, this technology essentially affects not just every industry, but every company and every department, every role. And McKinsey has done some phenomenal work around this, around sort of, what digital transformation is and what it is not. And I guess the subjective question I would ask, because I get asked it a lot, and Alex and then Liz, when I know you talk to leaders all the time. I know because Liz, I know the hours Liz's works. I'm sure, Alex, you work the same. You're talking to these huge leaders all the time, big or small or whatever. Like, who are the leaders when you're talking to them? You hear them thinking about it in the right way. Because I hear people talking all the time like, well, how should I be thinking about this? What kind of companies do well? Like, who does this well? And not even from an organizational standpoint, but really from a leadership and cultural standpoint. When you hear this, and also you can take the negative side of this as well. I don't want you to throw any clients under the bus, anonymous, of course. But like, what are you hearing when you're like, okay, I think that we're actually really going to have some success here? Like, what are the traits in leadership that you're hearing?
Great question. Listen, I would go back. I'll say similar to what I was saying before, just, top team, CEO driven, big aspiration, right? Big, bold aspiration on what they want to go do. This isn't like incremental change. it's a big, bold aspiration. When we hear that, we get excited because, at the end of the day, the models and the use cases are fun. They're sexy. They're fun to talk about what that you can have. But at the end of the day, you need the right data architecture, underlying cloud platform. Then you build models and you're going to need some UI, UX interface so everyone can use the tools well. And then I do not want to discount the whole downstream process redesign, change management incentives. Mm-hmm. It's so often that's an afterthought for companies. And those that actually think about that from the very beginning and recognize that, we often say for every $1 in technology, you better think about spending $5 on change management, process redesign, capability building, because that's where things get stuck. Usually you can solve things via technology and data. It can take some time, but you can solve it. It's those that can actually get adoption and scaling of those solutions that we think are going to be the differentiators between those who win and those who do not in this space. That's what I would add. I don't know, Liz, if you have some more to add to that.
Yeah, I think it's funny when you said, Alex, that don't do tech for tech's sake, think of problems you want to solve and then think if AI or Gen AI are the right things to solve it. But you have to map that, you add to that raising your ambition, because it's not about what are your traditional problems? Oh, you can use the AI to solve it. Now look how exciting that is. You could do so many incredible things now. So it's both and. It's not only what problems do you want to solve and get to the right tech to fit that problem solving, but also maybe the problem becomes defined as how big is our ambition? Is it big enough? Do we raise the bar on our ambition? Do we do something that we never thought we could do, but now we can? Can we disrupt someone we couldn't? Do we have some unfair advantage because we're already there? Really, really elevating that and then seeing if that's the new problem, how do I get there? Can I use AI or Gen AI to solve it? And then it's always just purpose-driven, values-driven, or value-driven. Ideally values-driven as well. But that takes a different tenor, and it does get everyone on board. You do need everyone on board, and it does tend to get everyone more on board if they realize we could be a rocket ship going here. Yes, I'll get on board. Yes, I'll commit to change management. Yes, I'll role model for my teams. Yes, I will get these cross-functional groups that are usually kind of clunky working together, but I'll make it happen. And you need that to get everyone on board with we're rewiring the whole organization, which is a book that Alex wrote. That's a best-selling book called Rewired, but it works just as well for Gen AI. You do need you need the full organizational buy-in for sure.
That's amazing. Alex, something I would love to ask you about is, based off of your vantage point, the people you're talking to, the companies you're consulting, who you're working with, what is one prediction you would make for AI going into the future that you think, maybe this is something, it's a misconception or something not a lot of people are talking about or thinking about, but what's something, one of these kind of underlooked areas that you feel like is going to be big, or some sort of prediction you have in that regard?
Well, Jaden, it's funny you say that, because every time I do a presentation or I have a client conversation, I actually start with the fact that everything I will say over the next whatever hour, I reserve the right to change my mind. I literally say that because the world is moving so darn fast, right? The reality is, I don't know. We don't know, right? Sora just came out, right? We didn't know that was going to kind of change the perspective of people. What I will say is there are some that say, let's just wait to see whether this is real or not. I would suggest it is absolutely real. It's not going away anytime soon. It is fundamentally changing people's choices on what do they do in college, what do they do post-college, how do you think about your career. And so I would suggest that this notion of waiting is not the right approach, but to really jump in and get going and learn. That I have complete confidence that prediction will continue to be true. And that it's, this whole tech and data thing is not going away anytime soon. So you got to learn about it. The other thing I will just say, and I'm not sure it's a prediction, but maybe a suggestion, which is I think everyone should learn about some of these tools in some way, form, or fashion. Forget about business, just for your own personal life, your own education, your own growth. There's a tremendous amount of opportunity to just increase the world's humanity, society, be better for the world by some of these technologies. And I think the more, people can learn about how you can use these tools in your daily life, forget about business, just in your daily life, you can really improve your livelihood over time.
I will. I will. And it's kind of a pivot, but I really believe it. I think that thinking about what humans can get desensitized to, like because we love the value from it. So if someone had said to people in the 80s, you will post all of your inner feelings on a public forum, share pictures of like all states of duress and entertainment, and the world can comment on it, they would be like, I'm not exposing my private life to this. But here we are. I think that humans are so eager for connection, and this whole concept of Gen AI as companion and mirror and patient, non-judgmental, like advice giver, I think that's where we are going to get so addicted as humans that even some of the objections people are having to like this kind of, the fear of the singularity, the fear of job loss, all these things that folks put up as like the no way, never. I just see so many use cases for engagement, human engagement. And I love the use cases for autistic kids. I love the use cases for the elderly. Like these are under-resourced communities where this actually is a very good solution. And I think it helps with loneliness. And I think there's a lot of things that I think help with. And on the flip side, humans are narcissistic, and it creates echo chambers. And you especially if it starts to be trained on our own thoughts and feelings, and then it feeds back to us. So there's danger there with lack of critical thought. But what I'm saying is that from the trend perspective is, I think we will quickly become very used to the benefit we get from this, from a co-pilot companion, just constant companion, that it will become second nature to us very, very quickly, more quickly than I think we thought.
Sure. Just for the record, Connor, I think you do have dinner with a McKinsey partner every night. Just for the record. At least most nights, I would guess. Listen, I will go back to something I said earlier, which is I would just encourage people to learn. Whether, I try to get my kids to learn, like play with the tools. There's nothing like playing with the tools and just experimenting. I tell people to jump onto podcasts. You don't even have to read, jump onto podcasts, listen to people who are really in the space and are talking about it all the time, like you, Connor, and just open up the tools and start experimenting, start playing with things, and you'll learn things faster than just reading about it. And so there's nothing like just learning for your own personal sake. And so it's the one thing I always leave people with, whether it's a business conversation, talking at a university, whatever it is, it's just go spend time learning and playing, because I do think it's fun, right? It's actually a lot of fun. So it's not just learning, but it's having fun as they go down this path.
Yeah, I'd say the same. I think I've seen, because I work with a lot of lawyers, and I think that they're reticent to adopt new tech. And there's a lot of cohorts that are reticent. So when it gets overwhelming, because you need to get that knowledge, think of ways you can break it down into like just small micro habits. Like I have a Duolingo habit that's been now, I'm on day like 1,200 and something, 1,300 and something, just 5 minutes. I'm very mindful. I'm very mindful of this Duolingo streak from COVID. But I think that if you just say to yourself, like if you can break down some of the barrier, a psychological barrier, because it seems overwhelming, and you just, if you can doubt your doubts on some of those things and just say, I'm just going to do a bite-sized exposure to it, but build on top of that. So maybe it's just 2 things a day, like somewhere where you build it into a micro habit, and use the tiny habits method, BJ Fogg from Stanford. It's awesome. Just like stack it with another habit, like use it to every Sunday I plan our family's meals and get the shopping list. Just do that more, because that will predispose you to doing it in your work life, which is really going to be a very big deal on your own personal and professional success. So yeah, make it small so you can make it big.
Absolutely love the advice from both of you. Liz, Alex, thank you so much for coming on to the AI Applied podcast today, sharing your perspectives, your insights. This has been absolutely phenomenal. I know I have learned a lot, and I think the listeners are really excited about some of the takeaways here. So really appreciate it. We're going to leave links in the show notes to your LinkedIns. I'm assuming that's the best way for people to reach out and get in contact with you. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on. To the listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to the AI Applied podcast. Make sure to rate us wherever you get your podcasts, and we hope that you all have an amazing rest of your day.